Welcome to the Deep Dive. I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that we are broadcasting to you late at night from some little old radio station in the Midwest.
Yeah, somewhere like a commercial street in Atchison, Kansas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Picture the studio windows are wide open to the summer evening. You've got those old cathedral radios glowing softly in the dark.
And maybe somewhere in the distance, a freight train is whistling across the Missouri River Valley.
It's that kind of night. A quiet, unhurried night where the world has finally slowed down. And, you can actually hear yourself think, we really want you to just settle in with us.
Right, because the text we're looking at today, it demands that kind of atmosphere. You really can't rush through it.
No, you definitely can't. So we are going to look at a classic essay from 1906 by the English writer G.K. Chesterton. It's called A Piece of Chalk.
And on the surface, it sounds incredibly mundane, right? It's just a story about a guy who decides to go for a walk in the Sussex countryside to do some sketching.
Right, which sounds lovely, but maybe not like a profound philosophical journey.
But it totally is. It's a Trojan horse of an essay. He uses this simple afternoon stroll to completely, deconstruct how we think about art and morality and, well, the hidden miracles of everyday life.
I have to admit, when I first read it, I was a little skeptical. He spends paragraphs talking about pocket lint and wrapping paper and cow anatomy.
It feels a bit eccentric at first glance.
Yeah, like a quaint relic of Edwardian England. I kept thinking, why should you, the listener who might be dealing with a stressful job or a chaotic modern life, why should you care about a guy in 1906 looking for art supplies?
Well, because I think we are all suffering from the exact philosophical blindness that Chesterton is trying to cure here.
That's a strong claim.
I mean it, though. We live in this era of just frantic consumption and endless utility. We're always trying to optimize every second, right? Always looking for the next app or the next vacation to finally make us feel complete.
The endless search for the next big thing.
Exactly. And Chesterton's essay is the antidote to that modern anxiety. He's inviting you to realize that the epic meaning you're searching for is probably, already sitting in your pocket.
Okay, let's unpack this, because he doesn't start with any grand declarations. He starts with a very normal morning.
A splendid morning, all blue and silver in the summer holidays, as he calls it.
Right. And then he says this really specific, kind of strange thing. He says he reluctantly tore himself away from the task of doing nothing in particular.
That phrasing is just brilliant.
It's so weird, though, calling doing nothing a task, because to us, doing nothing is just a void. It's not a task. It's the gap between tasks,
But that framing is deeply intentional on his part. We view doing nothing as passive, like wasting time. But Chesterton views it as this very active state of receptivity.
Like you have to work at it to get there.
Yeah, exactly. To notice the profound truths hidden in ordinary things, your mind has to be totally unhurried. If he was, rushing out the door, checking his watch to catch a train, this whole realization never happens.
Right. He wouldn't have noticed any of it.
Doing nothing in particular requires effort because you have to actively resist the urge to be productive. You have to clear the mental static.
Okay, so he's in this highly receptive state. And look at what he takes with him. He grabs a hat of some sort, a walking stick, and 6 very bright-colored chalks.
It's not a lot of gear.
No, but the way he describes it, it feels less like a man going for a walk and more like, a knight arming himself for a quest.
That is exactly the tone he's setting. He is equipping himself to recreate the world. But of course, to do that, he needs a canvas.
Which leads him straight into a clash of worldviews in a kitchen in his Sussex village.
Yeah.
And I feel like this kitchen scene perfectly mirrors our own modern conflicts.
Oh, absolutely. This is the foundation of his first major theme, the tension between utility and vision.
So he goes into the kitchen of this woman he calls a very square and sensible woman, and he asks her if she has any brown paper.
And she does. In fact, she has way too much of it. But there's this immediate, really funny misunderstanding between them.
Yeah, because they're looking at the same object in completely different ways. To her, there's only one logical reason you'd want coarse brown wrapping paper.
To wrap a parcel.
Right. She values it strictly for its toughness. Its economic utility. She's the ultimate pragmatist.
And Chesterton is just completely baffled by this mindset.
Yeah.
He actually tells her that tying up parcels is something he finds completely beyond his mental capacity.
Which is such a charming, self-deprecating thing to say. But it points to a deeper truth, doesn't it?
It does. He doesn't want the paper for its endurance or its strength. He wants it for its responsive surface.
A responsive surface. That's a great way to put it.
The sensible woman looks at the paper and sees a tool for commerce. Chesterton looks at it and sees a canvas for creation.
And when she finally realizes he wants to draw on it, her pragmatism kicks in again. She tries to offer him proper white notepaper.
Right, because if he's doing something refined like art, he shouldn't be using garbage packing paper just to save a few pennies.
But he has to explain that he isn't being cheap at all. He's choosing it deliberately. He says he loves the quality of brownness.
Which is such a Chestertonian phrase.
It really is. He compares the brownness of the paper to October woods or beer or the peat streams of the north. He elevates this trash to a natural wonder.
What's fascinating here is the metaphor he uses to defend it. He tells her that the brown paper represents the primal twilight of the first toil of creation.
Okay, hold on. I have to stop you there.
Yeah.
Because if you walked into someone's kitchen and asked for scrap paper and then called it the primal twilight of the first toil of creation,
They would think you were completely unhinged.
exactly. It's an objectively insane thing to say. I mean, isn't he just being dramatic for the sake of a good line?
It sounds totally hyperbolic, I know, but he is illustrating a cognitive mechanism that we have largely lost today.
How so?
Well, think about J.R.R. Tolkien, who is actually deeply influenced by Chesterton. Tolkien wrote about this concept called recovery in his essay on fairy stories.
Oh, right, recovery. I've read a bit about that.
Yeah, so Tolkien argued that as we get older and more pragmatic, our vision gets clouded by familiarity. Things just become trite to us.
So we stop seeing the actual thing.
Exactly. We don't see a tree anymore, we just see lumber or shade. We don't see paper, we see packaging. Recovery is the act of cleaning our mental windows so we can see things in their strange primal glory again.
So Chesterton is basically practicing recovery right there in the kitchen.
Yes. He is actively refusing to let the economic utility of the paper blind him to its elemental reality. On that dark, earthy background, he says a bright-colored chalk can pick out points of fire.
Like the first fierce stars springing out of the divine darkness.
Exactly. He sees the cosmos in a piece of trash.
I can definitely see how that plays out today with our own tools. Like, think about your smartphone.
That's a perfect example.
To a sensible modern person, a smartphone is purely utilitarian. It's just an inbox, a calendar, a way to order takeout.
But fundamentally, physically, what is it?
It's a glowing rectangle of glass and captured light that connects to invisible frequencies all over the globe. It's essentially a magic mirror.
It's pure magic. But because we use it to, pay our taxes, we've completely lost the wonder of it.
Chesterton is demanding that we don't lose that wonder. And he takes this practice of recovery even further the second he puts the brown paper in his pocket.
Ah, yes. The epic of the pocket.
Yeah, so this is where I have to push back a little again.
Yeah.
Because he goes on this massive philosophical tangent about his pocket.
He loves his pocket.
He really does. He says his pocket knife is the type of all human tools and the infant of the sword.
The infant of the sword. It's so poetic.
But he also claims he once intended to write a whole book of epic poems entirely about the things in his pockets. And he only stopped because he decided the age of great epics had passed.
He was probably half joking, but also entirely serious.
But is it just him being eccentric? I mean, a poem about a crumpled receipt and some keys?
It's not just eccentricity, I promise. It's this radically localized view of history. Chesterton believed that the macrocosm is contained within the microcosm.
Meaning you can find the big picture inside the small things.
Right. You don't need to read the Iliad to understand human survival and conflict. You just need to understand the lineage of your pocket knife. It carries the weight of humanity's long struggle against nature.
Oh, wow. I just thought about it like that.
And the keys in your pocket, they are the direct heirs to the drawbridges of medieval castles.
That is amazing. So by shrinking the epic down to pocket size, he's basically saying the grandeur of the universe is accessible right now wherever you are.
Exactly. You do not need to travel to a museum in Europe to encounter history. It's literally in your coat.
He's re-enchanting the mundane artifacts of a Tuesday afternoon. So armed with this mindset, his infant sword, his chalks, and his twilight paper, he ventures out onto the great downs of Sussex.
And his description of this landscape is so different from how we usually talk about nature.
Yeah, he completely ignores the traditional picturesque stuff. He doesn't talk about delicate flowers or pastoral beauty.
He focuses on the sheer terrifying scale of it. He talks about crawling across these colossal contours of the hills.
And he says they express the best quality of England because they are, at the same time, soft and strong.
The physical analogies he uses there are really striking. He compares the smoothness of these massive rolling hills to great cart horses or a beech tree.
But then he arrives at this bizarre paradox. He says this combination of softness and strength proves that the mighty are merciful.
Right, in the teeth of our timid and cruel theories, as he says.
How does he get from a smooth hill to the concept of mercy, though?
It comes down to the latency of power. He says that the landscape looks kindly, like the cottage is built on it, but for sheer power, it's like an earthquake.
Right, he says the lifting of the whole land was like the lifting of one enormous wave poised to wash them all away.
And if you've ever stood at the edge of the Grand Canyon or watched a massive storm roll in off the ocean, you know that feeling.
You feel incredibly small. You realize this geological force could just obliterate you without a second thought.
But right now, in this moment, it is letting you exist. It's providing soft turf for you to walk on.
And that restraint is what Chesterton calls mercy.
Yes, true power doesn't need to constantly assert itself by destroying things. The fact that the earth could crush us but cradles us instead is a profound theological observation.
The landscape is a sleeping giant that chooses to let us build our little cottages on its back.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. He's wandering across this sleeping giant, feeling this immense, merciful power, and he finally decides to sit down and draw.
And logically, you'd think he's going to sketch those majestic hills.
Right. But he explicitly warns us not to think that. He says, do not, for heaven's sake, imagine I was going to sketch from nature.
He has absolutely zero interest in drawing the hills or the cottages.
None. He says he is going to draw devils and seraphim and blind old gods and saints with robes of angry crimson.
Which is just such a funny bait and switch. He goes out into this beautiful nature specifically to avoid drawing it.
He says these mythical sacred symbols just look incredibly good in bright colors on brown paper. And then, almost as an aside, he admits they're also much easier to draw than nature.
And then, of course, a complication arrives. A cow slouches into his field of vision.
Right, and this cow forces a complete crisis of artistic method.
He admits that a mere artist might have drawn the cow as it appeared, but Chesterton confesses a serious technical limitation.
Yeah, physically cannot draw the hind legs of a quadruped.
He just can't do it.
So, because he lacks the technical skill to draw a photorealistic cow, he decides to draw the soul of the cow instead.
Which he envisions as all purple and silver with 7 horns.
7 horns. I mean, play devil's advocate here with me for a second. Isn't this just an elaborate cop-out?
I mean,
Like an artist who can't master basic anatomy deciding to just scribble colorful, abstract nonsense and proudly claim, oh, it's the soul.
On a one level, yes, it's a very self-deprecating joke about his own drafting skills. But on a deeper level, it's actually a devastating critique of literalism.
Literalism in art.
Yeah, think about it. If you just want a perfect record of the geometry of a cow, use a camera. But art isn't about replication, it's about interpretation.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Chesterton isn't trying to capture the physical shape of the animal. He's trying to capture its spiritual weight, the mystery of this weird biological creature existing in the universe.
So a purple 7-horned beast might actually be closer to the truth of what a cow represents in the cosmic order.
Exactly. It's much closer to the truth than just an anatomically perfect sketch of its hind legs.
It really reminds me of the shift from classical realism to modernism in art. The goal isn't to show what the eye sees, but what the mind feels.
That's a great comparison, and this actually leads him into a much broader theory about how human beings interact with nature in general.
Right, he starts talking about the old poets, the ones who lived before William Wordsworth.
This is a crucial distinction he makes. Wordsworth represents that romantic tradition of directly observing nature and describing it in super granular detail.
Like writing an entire ode to a specific cloud or a patch of daffodils.
Exactly. But Chesterton notes that people often assume the older poets, like medieval or classical writers, didn't care about nature because they rarely described it directly.
They were always writing about great men or epic battles or gods.
But Chesterton totally flips that assumption. He says those older poets didn't write about nature because they were too busy absorbing it.
They were using it as raw material.
Yes. He says they sat on the great hills to write about the great men. They stared at the blinding snow all day, and instead of writing a poem about snow, they used that intense whiteness to paint the robes of their holy virgins.
They watched the heraldic sunsets and then blazoned those exact colors onto the shields of their paladins.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the mechanism he describes here is fascinating. He summarizes it with this incredible sentence.
Oh, I know the one. The inspiration went in like sunbeams and came out like Apollo.
In like sunbeams and came out like Apollo. Let's really chew on that, because that is a profound theory of human consciousness.
He's essentially saying that we are not mirrors. We don't just passively reflect data back into the world.
No, we are crucibles. The human mind takes the raw, physical data of the universe, sunlight, leaves, snow, and metabolizes it.
It mixes with our intellect and our spirit and our internal mythology.
And it is transmuted into something entirely new. It goes in as weather, it comes out as a deity, it goes in as a green forest, it comes out as the mythological figure of Robin Hood.
Which means that sitting on those Sussex Downs and drawing a purple seven-horned seraphim is actually a deeply intimate interaction with the landscape.
Yes, the landscape is actively fueling his divine imagination.
As he puts it, even though he couldn't get the best out of the landscape with a crayon, the landscape was definitely getting the best out of him.
Yeah.
And that completely challenges how we consume our environments today. We are so obsessed with capturing the exact literal image of a place.
Oh, totally. Think of people taking hundreds of identical photos of a sunset on their phones just to post online.
We're constantly trying to freeze the sunbeam.
But Chesterton argues we should let the sunbeam enter us, change us, and produce something new, even if it looks totally unrelated to the literal sunset.
Exactly. Let it become Apollo.
But right as he is in this amazing creative trance, transmuting the Sussex hills into blind old gods, everything just grinds to a halt.
Disaster strikes.
He reaches into his pocket and makes a devastating discovery.
He realizes, to his great disgust, that he has left his white chalk at home.
He searches through the lint and the infant sword and the brown paper, but it's just gone.
And initially, he tries to brush it off. He tries to play it cool.
Yeah, he calls white a most exquisite, inessential chalk.
But he barely finishes the thought before he aggressively corrects himself. This missing piece of chalk triggers the philosophical climax of the entire essay.
He pivots so sharply. He states that anyone acquainted with philosophy or religion knows that white is, quote, positive and essential.
He realizes that his entire drawing, his whole vision of these gods and saints, literally cannot exist without it.
So let's dive into this theology of color, because this is where Chesterton takes a sledgehammer to our modern assumptions. He wants to totally redefine how we understand white.
And like you mentioned earlier, culturally, we think of white as empty. It's the blank canvas.
Right. It's the absence of color. Scientifically, it's just the reflection of all wavelengths. It's a void.
And Chesterton calls that a wise and awful truth that his brown paper art has just totally disproved.
Because when you are drawing on dark brown paper, white is not an absence at all.
No, it is a striking addition. He declares that white is a shining and affirmative thing, as fierce as red, as definite as black.
As fierce as red. That is such a provocative combination of words. How on earth can white be fierce?
Well, he gives this brilliant physical analogy. He says when your pencil grows red hot, it draws roses. But when it grows white hot, it draws stars.
Wow. It's the ultimate intensity.
Exactly. In physics, when an object gets hot enough, it moves past red heat and becomes white hot. It's the pinnacle of energy and light. It's blindingly active.
And Chesterton takes this physical reality and uses it to make this monumental point about moral theology.
He says that one of the defiant verities of the best religious morality, and he explicitly names real Christianity here, is exactly the same thing.
The chief assertion of religious morality is that white is a color.
Yes.
I have to stop here because this concept completely upended me when I read it. We are so deeply conditioned to think of virtue as a negative space.
How do you mean?
Like, what does it actually mean to be a good person today?
Right.
Usually it's defined by what you don't do. I didn't steal, I didn't cheat on my taxes, I didn't post anything offensive online.
We define goodness as the avoidance of moral danger.
Right. We think virtue is just standing perfectly still and keeping our hands clean.
We view virtue as the absence of vice, just like we view white as the absence of color.
But Chesterton is saying absolutely not. Virtue is not an absence. It is not a void.
He says virtue is a vivid and separate thing, like pain or a particular smell. It is an active, affirmative, aggressive presence in the world.
Give me a real-world equivalent of this. Because theoretically, it sounds great, but how does fierce virtue actually manifest?
Okay, think about the difference between a bystander and an intervener. Say you're on a subway and someone is being harassed.
Okay.
A bystander sees it happening and doesn't join in. They do no harm. By the modern, passive definition, they are good.
But Chesterton would say that's just a blank space.
Exactly. True virtue is the person who steps in, de-escalates the situation, and protects the victim, even at their own risk.
That action isn't a lack of vice, it is a positive, burning force.
And Chesterton gives his own specific examples in the text to prove this. He says mercy does not merely mean not being cruel.
Right. He says mercy is a plain and positive thing like the sun, which one either has seen or not seen.
You cannot passively be merciful by sitting alone in your room doing nothing. Mercy is an intervention. It requires extending yourself into someone else's reality.
And he pushes it even further with his next example. He applies this exact logic to chastity.
This one is fascinating.
He says it does not mean mere abstention from sexual wrong. It means something flaming, like Joan of Arc.
Flaming like Joan of Arc.
That is just a wild image to attach to chastity. In our modern lexicon, chastity is almost a joke. It's viewed as prudishness or a repression of desire. It's a folding inward.
It's seen as a negative.
Right. So how on earth is it flaming like a warrior saint burning at the stake?
Because he is divorcing the concept from Victorian prudery and returning it to its theological root. For Chesterton, chastity isn't about fearing the body or running away from the world.
What is it about then?
It is a fierce, single-minded devotion to a higher love or a sacred purpose. Joan of Arc wasn't a passive ascetic hiding in a convent. She was a teenager leading an army in full armor.
Driven by this unyielding, affirmative vision.
Yes, her virtue was aggressive. Chesterton is arguing that true goodness is not safe. It is not tepid. It is a white-hot star.
God paints in many colors, he writes. But he never paints so gorgeously, I'd almost said so godly, as when he paints in white.
It's just a breathtaking synthesis. He takes missing art supply and turns it into a defense of active morality.
And then he turns this philosophical lens onto the culture of his own era.
He diagnoses what he calls the sullen costume of his time. And honestly, this observation applies just as much, if not more, to our current era.
Yeah, he points out this massive cultural contradiction. He says, if society truly believed that white was a blank, colorless, negative thing, then what color would they wear to signify the ultimate negation?
The ultimate emptiness of death.
Right, they would wear white to funerals.
Exactly. If white really means nothing, it's the perfect symbol for the end of life. He says if this pessimistic period really believed it, we'd see city gentlemen going to funerals in frock coats of spotless silver linen, wearing top hats as white as wonderful arum lilies.
But they don't do that.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
No, we wear black and gray.
And Chesterton argues that this proves his point. Deep down, even a secular pessimistic culture intuitively knows that white is too alive, too fierce, too affirmative for mourning.
White is the color of life, of fierce virtue. It is entirely inappropriate for death because it is the ultimate expression of positive existence.
It's such a brilliant sociological observation. Even in our fashion choices, our subconscious betrays our deeper understanding of reality.
We know white is a blazing presence, which is why we reserve it for weddings, for beginnings, for moments of profound affirmation.
So let's reset the scene here. We have our narrator sitting on this colossal rolling hill in Sussex.
He's just mentally deduced the fierce, burning nature of virtue and the absolute theological necessity of the color white.
He is bursting with this philosophy. He's got his twilight brown paper ready. He's ready to draw his seraphim and his stars, but he physically lacks the chalk to do it.
He is stranded. He just sits on the hill in a state of deep despair.
He runs through the logistics in his mind, right? The nearest town is Chichester, and it is far away.
And even if he walked all the way there, it's highly improbable that a rural town would even have an artist's colorman, an art supply shop.
I love how he describes the stakes of this missing chalk. To anyone else passing by, it's a minor inconvenience. But to him, in this heightened state of awareness, it is an absolute tragedy.
He says that without white, his absurd little pictures would be as pointless as the world would be if there were no good people in it.
The brown paper remains just the dark primal twilight. It needs those points of fire to make sense of the darkness.
It needs the virtue to make the world coherent.
And he's just staring stupidly around him, completely paralyzed by this perceived lack, racking his brain for any kind of expedient solution, feeling totally impoverished.
And then it happened.
The grand epiphany, the moment the entire essay has been quietly building toward.
He suddenly stands up and roars with laughter.
He laughs so hard and so repeatedly that the cows, the very ones whose souls he was just trying to draw, stop and stare at him.
As he puts it, they call a committee.
I can just picture that so clearly. This eccentric Englishman in a hat standing on a hill, laughing hysterically at the sky, while a group of cows forms a confused circle around him.
It's such a gentle, funny image.
So what does this all mean? Why is he laughing? Well, he uses these two hilarious analogies to explain his sudden realization. He says, imagine a man in the Sahara Desert regretting that he has no sand for his hourglass.
Or a gentleman in the mid-ocean wishing that he had brought some salt water with him for a chemical experiment.
It is the ultimate cosmic irony. He was sitting there bemoaning the lack of this one essential affirmative thing. He felt poor. He felt empty-handed.
But as he says, I was sitting on an immense warehouse of white chalk.
The landscape itself, the entire Sussex Downs.
He realizes that the ground beneath him, rolling for miles and miles until it meets the sky, is made entirely out of white chalk.
He was literally sitting on the solution to his problem the entire time. He was resting on a mountain of the exact material he thought he lacked.
This raises an important question about how we interact with our environment, because look at the physical action he takes here.
He doesn't go to a store. He doesn't engage in commerce at all.
No, he engages directly with the earth. He just stoops down and breaks a piece off of the rock he is sitting on.
And he notes that the raw rock didn't mark as well as the shop chalks do. It's rougher, it's less refined, maybe a bit crumbly.
But it gave the effect. It worked.
It was enough. And the result is that he stands there in what he calls a trance of pleasure.
And he has this final, sweeping realization. He says that this southern England isn't just a grand peninsula.
It isn't just a tradition or a civilization. It is something even more admirable than all of those grand historical concepts.
It is a piece of chalk.
It is a piece of chalk. The very thing he needed to create his art, to express his fierce, affirmative vision of virtue and beauty, was the very foundation he was standing on.
And this is where Chesterton elevates a comical anecdote into one of the greatest parables of the modern age.
It really is a parable.
It's a parable about gratitude, about presence, and really about the tragedy of our collective blindness. We are constantly sitting on immense warehouses of exactly what we need, while simultaneously crying out that we are destitute.
This speaks so directly to the modern condition. I mean, think about the anxiety of our era. We are defined by a sense of lack.
We're constantly scrolling, consuming, searching.
We suffer from massive FOMO, fear of missing out. We're conditioned by marketing and social media to believe that the solution to our unhappiness is always somewhere else.
We believe we have to go to Chichester to find the artist's shop to buy the specialized tool to fix our lives.
We think, if I just get that new productivity app, or if I can just afford that retreat in Bali, or if I can just move to a better city, then I will finally have the materials I need to be happy.
To be creative, to be virtuous.
Yes, we're always looking for that missing, perfectly refined, shop-bought white chalk.
But Chesterton's Quiet Summer Walk dismantles that entire mindset. The cure for this modern anxiety isn't discovering something new. It isn't traveling further or buying more.
The cure is finally noticing what has been beneath your feet all along.
It is the profound realization that the ordinary, mundane reality of your life, the neighborhood you live in, the flawed people you interact with, the basic, unglamorous materials of your daily routine, these are not just the boring background to a better life you wish you were living.
They are the substance itself. They are the immense warehouse.
This actually connects so deeply to themes Chesterton would later develop in his masterpiece, Orthodoxy.
Oh, absolutely.
In that book, he tells a story about an English yachtsman who miscalculates his course and lands on what he thinks is a strange, exotic island in the South Seas.
But he soon discovers he has accidentally just landed back in England.
Exactly. It's the thrill of discovering that the magical land you were searching for is your own home.
C.S. Lewis, who was profoundly shaped by Chesterton, talked about this relentless search in terms of joy.
Right, that pang of longing we feel for something just out of reach.
We constantly attach that longing to new objects or experiences. But the objects always fail us, because the joy is meant to point us toward the divine reality that underpins everything.
And Chesterton is saying that the divine reality isn't found by escaping the physical world, but by diving deeper into it, by breaking off a piece of the rock you were sitting on.
It really comes down to the difference between a tourist and an inhabitant. A tourist is always looking for the next attraction. Chesterton is inviting us to be inhabitants of our own lives.
To recognize that our own personal southern England, whatever our daily context is exactly the material we need to draw our masterpieces.
It might be rough. It might not mark as smoothly as the idealized, Instagram-filtered version of life we imagine. But it works. It gives the effect.
And it challenges us to ask a very uncomfortable question about our own perceived limitations. How often do we use a lack of perfect resources as an excuse for not exercising fierce virtue or creativity?
We say, I can't be generous right now, I don't have enough money. Or I can't be creative, I don't have the right workspace.
And Chesterton is just laughing at us from the Sussex Downs, saying, "You are sitting in the Sahara complaining about a lack of sand."
The materials for fierce, affirmative, white-hot virtue are always present. Mercy and chastity and courage don't require specialized equipment. They just require you to engage with the reality immediately in front of you.
As we sit here, imagining the quiet night outside our hypothetical radio station in Atchison, Kansas, listening to the world slow down, it becomes so clear why this essay has endured for over a century.
It doesn't preach at us. It doesn't offer a 10-step program for self-improvement.
No, it just offers a profound shift in perspective. It takes the humblest things, wrapping paper, pocket lint, a piece of rock, and reveals them as the very instruments of the divine.
It re-enchants the world because it insists that the world is enchanted precisely because it is real. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a challenge.
Something to carry with you as the sun goes down tonight.
We spent this time talking about Chesterton finding his literal white chalk in the hills of Sussex. But if the very ground beneath his feet was the instrument he needed to create his art, what chalk are you currently ignoring in your own daily routine?
What if the mundane environment you walk through every day, the cracked sidewalks, the repetitive tasks, the familiar faces you barely register anymore, isn't just the waiting room for your real life?
What if it is the very canvas and material you need to build a life of profound meaning and fierce virtue?
What if the extraordinary thing you are frantically searching for is already in your pocket or right under your shoes?
I want to invite you to do something tangible tonight. Leave your phone on the counter, step out your front door, and take a walk through your own neighborhood.
Don't go searching for an extraordinary experience. Don't look for a revelation.
Just go out to rediscover the extraordinary nature of ordinary life. Look at the shadows. Look at the architecture of the mundane. Look at the ground. Notice where you already are. Because sometimes the most fierce, burning, and affirmative things in the universe are just waiting for you to bend down and pick them up. Thank you for slowing down with us on this deep dive. Take care, and we'll see you next time.